You know, ladies and gentlemen, I believe in a theory of parallel universes. Therefore, in a parallel universe in 1977, Hockey Night in Canada had an announcement. Scoring his 58th goal of the season for the Montreal Canadiens, number 27, Darryl Sittler, assisted by number 10, Guy Fleur, and number 25, Jacques Lemaire. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Montreal Canadiens could have drafted Darryl Sittler, would have changed the universe forever. They would have won 8 or 9 straight cups. There would have been no drama for Sittler in Toronto with Harold Ballard. They had a battle every 3 years. His trade to the Flyers, where he was allegedly traded by Clark the day he was supposed to be made captain, that has to be looked at. Now, today we're going to be looking at the bare bones information. Now, this has been talked about in various publications through the years, and specifically, Line in Winter talks about the Pollock had a chance to draft him in a 1970 entry draft. This is the one Gilbert Perreault was available. Now, one because of the information or the programs that in Major Junior that year went second. Reggie Leach went third. Rick McClish, both drafted by Boston. Montreal had number 5 and number 7. Ray Martinyuk, which was a goalie, which he felt would be a future prospect. Then Chuck Lefley was taken at number 6, a very competent player, with Greg Polis, who ended up being an OK NHLer. But here we are, number 8, direct from London Knights of the OHA, Darryl Sittler. And at the time, he was playing center, but he had played left wing for a little while as well. Now, what we're going to do is going to break down some of the information about what Darryl Sittler did before he was not drafted by the Montreal Canadiens. Now, internationally, we know how well he did at the Worlds and the Canada Cup. So he played a season of Junior B before he ended up in London. Now, 6 feet 180, came in again as a center, left-hand shot. He played with London of the OHA in 1968 with 63 points in 54 games. 69, he had 99 points in 53 games. In 1970, his draft year put up 90 points in 54 games with 126 minutes and penalties. Now, he was named to the OHA All-Star second team with London in 69. Now, the native of Kitchener, Ontario, who called his hometown St. Jacobs, Ontario, eventually came to be the star in the 1970s. The franchise at the time transitioned from a decade featuring championships to the doldrums of the Harold Ballard ownership era. Through it all, there was one player who truly beloved in Toronto, the first player drafted by the Leafs in a decade. Now, to many, he inspired a generation of young players to follow his example of on-ice play and off-ice class. Now, I really don't think Sittler was in the plans of the Montreal Canadiens. But let's put this in perspective. We could talk days about how important Darryl Sittler was to the Leafs and the NHL. He was a hero to many. One person called him the best compliment you get, the Anglophone Jean Beliveau, because as much as Beliveau was respected in Acadian and Quebecois and non-traditional English parts of Canada, Sittler was respected on the opposite side and in Quebec as well. Some people bemoaned in the 74 season that Darryl Sittler was again available and Pollock didn't take it, because Pollock used to make some mistakes. He drafted some players that number one that either didn't want to play for the team or did nothing. Now, let's put this in perspective, ladies and gentlemen. Darryl Sittler was the hero of the Canada Cup in '76. Played well for Canada at the World Championships. International superstar. Let's say he would have been drafted by Montreal. Probably would, like Lafleur, scored 25 and 30 goals a season these first couple of years. Then he would open out. It boggles the mind. Can you imagine him playing with Frank Mahovlich? Him playing with Van Cornway, Henri Richard, Again, Peter Mahovlich, maybe playing with Gainey on a defensive line. Imagine him playing in the power play. Shutt, Lemaire, Lafleur, Robinson, Sittler. Now it's not out of the thought pattern that Sittler would have ended up in Montreal, but then again, they were so concerned about getting Lafleur, they kind of forgot the 70 draft. And Lefley was okay, like I said, but Martignac had no future with Montreal because he already had Ken Dryden. So basically, he took somebody that maybe the scouts wanted to say was on their resume. And Montreal was drafting a whole bunch of college players at the time too, one of the first teams in the league to do that. Let's put this in perspective what he did, okay? Just NHL awards and honors. All-Star game in 75, second team All-Star game in 78, Challenge Cup NHL All-Stars in 79, All-Star game in 1980, All-Star game in 83. Played with Toronto from September 9th, 75 to December 29th, 79. And he was, Toronto captain, and he played second tenure as captain between September 1980 to January 82. He was their points leader and assist leader in 73, points leader in 74, Molson Cup three-star leader in 75 with the points leader, Molson Cup leader again, points leader, he broke 100 the first time in 76, points leader for Toronto in 77 with 90, with 21 points in the playoffs. 78 points leader, a big campaign, 117 and 72 assists. Molson Cup winner and points leader in 87. And he also had points leader in 1980 for Toronto with 40 goals and 57 assists. Now he was also the goal leader for Toronto in 1981 and the Molson Cup leader. He also led Philadelphia in goals with 43. League records. Most points in win game, of course, the infamous 10 versus Boston on February 7, 76, 6 goals, 4 assists. Most goals in one playoff game, 5 for Toronto, Game 5 against Philly in the quarterfinals in 76. Again, most goals in a game, he holds the Toronto record. Most points in one period, 5. Most career hat tricks with 18. Most 40-goal seasons, again, at the time, but obviously Austin Matthews will destroy that. Will continue to destroy that. Most career penalty minutes by a center with 763. Most goals in a season by a center, 45 and 78. Most shots in one season, 346 and 76. Longest point streak for Toronto, 18 at the time with Eddie Olczyk. Longest assist leader, 15 games. Most points in one playoff game for Toronto, 6. Again, in that 5-goal game against the Flyers. More goals in one period, period 2 against the Flyers. Fastest 2 goals, one playoff game, 12 seconds versus Atlanta. Now, very, very interesting transaction history. His WHA rights were traded by the Edmonton Oilers, or the Alberta Oilers, to Toronto in exchange for Ron Climie and a 73 third-round draft pick, which ended up being Glenn McDonald, but obviously weren't used. In September 2082, was traded by Toronto to Philly in exchange for Rick Costello, Hartford's 82 second-round draft pick. Ended up Peter Inachek in future considerations, was Ken Strong in March 82. He was eventually traded to Detroit for Murray Craven and Joe Patterson in 1984. His contract was bought out, and there was a possibility he was going to move over to Vancouver, but it never panned out. Now, Sittler, again, very, very deep career. Life outside the NHL, numerous charities. But again, first draft pick of the Calgary Broncos in the 72 WHA draft. He was recruited by the Tours in 73 when his contract was up with the Maple Leafs, but he didn't sign. He could also consider retiring rather than report to Detroit after being traded there in October 84. He called, again, Toronto's 78 playoff series win over the Islanders his greatest thrill as a Leaf. He played on a big line with the Flyers with Ilka Sanisalo and Billy Barber. I remember that line, boys, were awful good in the power play. Now, he's been an advertising spokesperson for numerous companies and also played junior C hockey with the Elmira Sugar Kings before joining London for 68. He eventually had a no-trade clause worked in his Maple Leafs contract in 73, so he would not go to WHA, thus pleasing Ballard. He eventually, again, turned down that offer under the no-trade clause from the Toros. He, again, traded by the Flyers GM Bob Clark in the day he was expected to be named the Flyers captain. Very low ranking, the Tumble 100. He said 93rd. I would give him top 80. Now, he played again left wing throughout his first two NHL seasons before being moved back to center. Thus, with Montreal, he would probably played left wing. The big line, of course, with Toronto, Lanny McDonald, Errol Thompson. He eventually received a controversial $7,500 silver tea set from Leafs owner Harold Ballard in honor of his 76 heroics, again before the Canada Cup. Now, he was invited to the 81 Canada Cup roster, but did not make it. Very controversial as well. Now, he opted to retire rather than accept a contract offer for Vancouver in the summer of '85. Now, he was also a vice president of the NHL Players Association and ironically wore number 9 during his first season in Philly because Reggie Leach had number 27. He also ran a hockey school in London with the great Walt McKechnie off seasons of early playing days, and if you can find it, all Toronto Maple Leaf book called Sittler was co-written with the great Chris Goins, writer. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're a Montreal Canadian fan, watch. Why did Darryl Sittler stay with Toronto all those years? Why didn't he not ask to be traded? Well, like I said, he was heart and soul of Toronto. And no matter what game it was, he was doing something, just like Belleville. I saw Sittler play in his prime, and again, he could play defense, he could play offense. He was a team leader. He was respected by his peers. You look at that 79 game Toronto and Montreal game 4, where Tiger Williams took a freak about that penalty overtime that led to Montreal winning after Toronto had came back from, I think, 4 goals down. Sittler was basically a class act all the way and still is. He's had some successes in his life. He's had some tragedies. And the Sittler family should be saluted because they've always been dedicated to hockey no matter what's happening. But it was a sad day when Lanny McDonald was traded, ladies and gentlemen. But it was a worse day when Sittler was traded. He wanted to be the Leaf for the rest of his life, ladies and gentlemen. Montreal wouldn't have traded him for sure. But it came down to this. Maybe he knew Steve Shutt was coming down the road or somebody very strong. Maybe he thought Lefley was going to be that player with speed. Chuck Lefley had good speed. Later on, Murray Wilson. But I still say they made a mistake. Sam Pollock made a huge mistake not drafting Sittler. But, I mean, we made a big mistake not drafting Bossy, not drafting, Denny Savard. No offense to Doug Wickenheiser, but he was no Denny Savard. Hockey's a strange game. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. But in that parallel universe, I can see Darryl Sittler with a Montreal Canadiens jersey hoisting the Stanley Cup. If you think I'm wrong, the facts are there. Sam Pollock made a mistake. If you're a Toronto Maple Leaf fan hearing this for the first time, you must understand that I don't lie to you. Your team could have won a cup in the 1970s were it not for Harold Ballard. Paul Metier was there, Sittler, Thompson, Turnbull, Salming, Lanny McDonald. You had a good young core of players. Boutet and everybody else. You could have won the cup easy because Sittler wasn't with Montreal. They were weak, and the Islander Cups that he had in the 1980s could have easily been Toronto. You could have, found a way to bring Gretzky to Toronto. I'm kidding you not. Crazier things have happened. Anyway, thanks for listening. Bye.